You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
Time to sharpen those swords. You're listening to Sabres Semantics, a hard-hitting interview and discussion show featuring players, alumni, media, and all others who have or still cover the NHL's Buffalo Sabres. With interesting stories from the past and current objective analysis, this show is sure to provide an entertaining and unique perspective for both Sabres and hockey fans alike.
Oh, brother, we are not worthy!
Exclusively on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Now, here's your host of Sabres Semantics, Brandon Caputo.
Welcome into another episode of Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work in Niagara since 1983. Check out their up-to-date job board at ehc.on.ca to find your next work opportunity today. Thank you to everybody watching on the video version on YouTube. Make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell. And thank you to those that are listening on your favorite on-demand audio platform. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad are with you once again to recap the last stretch of games for the Sabres. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about the Kevyn Adams recent press conference from last week. We're also got some fan polls and just general state of the Sabres as they move forward here. A 7-game losing streak, and they still got some games here before they hit the Christmas break. So big games coming up as well that could, believe it or not, have them right near a wild card spot despite how rough of a stretch it has been. Austin, I know we're going to have a lot of thoughts today on, what we think the Sabres should do going forward as far as what has gone wrong with the whole collective team after having a little bit of an encouraging start or first quarter. And again, what's kind of just been snowballing these last 7 games since they came back from that California road trip where they won 3 straight games has just been a collective team just collapse at times. And before we get to the Adams press conference portion, what are your general thoughts on the way the team kind of has looked on a downswing lately?
Mentally weak, I think, is the best way to describe it. I mean, the Colorado game is kind of where it all started, right? I think, the Vancouver loss sucked, but they battled back, they got a point. The Colorado loss to me is where this all kind of really comes to a head, right? You score 4 in the first period, you're up 4-1 going into the third period, and you blow the lead in the third. You don't even get a point, so that's right there. You kind of rebound with a strong showing against Winnipeg. They have Connor Hellebuyck, the best goalie in the NHL right now. I don't know if many people will argue against that fact, and you're able to get a point out of that. And then you have that clunker against Utah, and then another mentally weak showing against Detroit. This team has blown so many leads, whether it's the third period or just in general. We've kind of talked about many times on this podcast that even under Granato, it kind of seemed at times they just sit back and they hold on to the lead. They rarely, stay on the attack, stay on the offensive, and win a game by just suffocating the other team and keeping it in their own end. They kind of just sit back and pray and hope. And it's a problem that was under Granato. It's a problem that's still here under Lindy through 28 games. It's inexplicable. It's inexcusable at this point. I mean, this team has talent. They have some good pieces. Dahlin's been out, and I understand how big of an impact that has on your team. 100%. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words right now because there is no easy solution, right? Like Greenway came back, and the team looked good against Detroit for most of the game. Don't get me wrong, that 5th goal, you that has to be a stop every single time. I don't know what James Reimer was doing on that last goal. But the fact that got Sebastian Casa in the game, you scored on him, but you didn't test him after that. That's also been like there's just so many common themes with the Sabres team, and the only thing I can think of is they lack that killer instinct. And I don't know how you get that in this team. Lindy, you tried, I guess. I don't know. But at some point, it's either you have it or you don't. And if you don't have it, something needs to change. And, we'll talk about that later. But this team doesn't really change.
Well, Adams talked about in his presser, which we're going to get into, but he talked about, I think he was asked what's been different under Lindy than the prior coaching staff. And the only thing that he could really say was they're accountable. And it was like, I just felt like that was almost like a cop-out answer to just say like, they're more accountable, but at what? Because the same problems that they were having last year are creeping back into this team this year. And I'm not saying that that's Lindy Ruff's fault, but it's almost like how is the identity of the team changed other than we saw at the beginning of the year, those practice habits where Lindy had them doing, push-ups and stuff or going offside and things like that. But like when I look at a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs under Craig Berube, I can clearly see a difference in the way that they approach games and the mentality that they play with. They're not trying to outscore teams 7-5 anymore like they did when they had Sheldon Keefe. You can see the Leafs playing a different way that is going to hopefully make them more successful come playoff time, which who knows. But we'll get to see this Leafs team here in this next stretch. But there you can see like how the team dynamic has changed. I don't know how the group has changed under Lindy from Granato last year other than practicing harder.
I'll tell you this. I can see a distinct change in two lines. That fourth line is fast and physical, and it's, it is what it is. That third line, when Jordan Greenway is healthy, they have an identity of Zucker, McLeod, and Greenway. They're very good. But the identity, the first accountability, that's just Kevyn Adams' buzzword. It was his buzzword the players' buzzword all offseason. I don't understand how they're being held more accountable. I don't really see it, aside from Jack Quinn got sat. He needed to be certain things like that. And you're probably going to see, once this team gets a little bit healthier on the back end, I hope you see some accountability there. But in terms of what's really changed, Tage is healthier. He still looks pretty good, but it's the same old overarching issues, which is they don't have that killer instinct. They do crack under the first sign of pressure every time they have a lead. Not every time, but most of the time when they have a lead. Like it's just something that with this roster, I don't know. Like Jason Zucker's comments after last night's game, like that was really refreshing. He seems like the type of guy who knows what it takes to break out of this and do that. And this isn't a shot at anyone else, but you could hear the guys who have been here, they're saying the same old things we've heard. So it was nice to hear Zucker kind of add a different perspective there.
Yeah, he's been great.
He's been great. Phenomenal. Adams deserves his flowers for that. But it's very hard for one guy like that to kind of instill that mentality on everybody else. I don't know how it happens. I hope it will happen, but we're 28 games in and we need results. We don't need the kumbaya, rah-rah motivational session. Like, you need results. I don't know what it is here. Lindy's doing the best that he can. He's making some really big errors. Like, he can't play Jokiharju with power, but he continues to do that. Maybe I'll give him the benefit of the doubt now that Samuelson's back and Dahlin appears to be coming back soon. Maybe that'll shake up, but like, he's just not changed that. He's not really done anything to change the power play. I know he's not in charge of it, but you're the head coach. You can make a change to that. And the power play has been abysmal, went through a really good stretch, and then has been pathetic again. So, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like, the on ice, what this roster has on the ice is some good, some bad. And again, don't get me wrong, a lot of teams are not built to withstand an injury to your best player, your best defenseman in Rasmus Dahlin, but like, they look lost without him. Like, Byram and Johnson, nothing against Byram. Byram has stepped up in a handful of games that Dahlin's been gone, but last night him and Johnson were putrid. And it's not necessarily all Bo and Byram's fault, but it's just, it is what it is. At this point, they are what they are, and I think it stems from the GM has to step up here and change something because this is who they are. You know, I know they're young, guys like Dylan Cousins and all that, but like Dylan Cousins has been in the NHL for 3+ seasons. He might be young in age, but he's not young in experience. Peterka, same thing. Zach Benson, I love Zach Benson. The points aren't there, but he's playing the right way. But like, unfortunately for him, the impact isn't felt because the results aren't there. So like, as good as Yuri Kulich has scored a couple goals, he got scratched. Like, it's just, I don't know. It feels like the top six is, everyone has talked about it so many times. The top six is still where all the issues lie, and that hasn't changed. So like, until that changes, I don't know how much more you can expect.
I remember we talked early in the season, and you were pretty critical of the goaltending with Levi and Luukkonen to start the year. And it almost seems like, you know, it's kind of flipped in that sense. Like, to me, I'm not blaming Luukkonen / Levi / Reimer, although last night Reimer really could have came up with a save or two to win that game against Detroit. But regardless, it isn't all on the goaltending now as opposed to early in the season where they just needed that big save in games. And I think that's kind of been like a complete 180, and it's just kind of head-scratching to think how the team's kind of changed in that sense. Yeah,
I mean, Luukkonen has been very good since you and I last talked, and I said he could play better, and he's played better. So goaltending is not really the issue anymore. Defense has been inconsistent, yes, but like, they're also not really giving up. Like, they still give up a lot of high-grade chances, but they don't look completely lost in their own end all the time anymore. It's just, I mean, we sat here, and again, when we start talking about Adams, this will kind of apply more, but we sat here in the offseason saying they could use a top 4 defenseman and a top 6 forward. Their two biggest needs to this day right now, a top 4 defenseman and a top 6 forward. So it's like, you want to buy into the guys that are here because there is talent here. And the bottom 6 remake has really worked out. The bottom 6 is really solid, but the issues that have always existed, maybe in different forms, still exist now. So it's, I don't know. We could sit here, we can kind of break down their on ice play, but to me, it goes far beyond the roster. And I know people probably don't want to hear that because people say that at some point the players got to play. Yeah, absolutely. At some point the players got to step up. But you know what? Kevyn Adams has been the GM this is his 5th or is this his 4th? Either way, he's been here for a while, and we're no closer to taking that next step than we were the day he got here.
It's almost like a systemic problem, like you're seeing, you know, with the Rangers right now as well. Like, they're just, you know, in a complete spiral, and they're bringing back comments to when their old coach Gerard Gallant was there and talking about talent, you know, is great, but if everybody's not pulling the same rope or, you know, trying out there, it's not going to work. And obviously they've been through another coach since then. And it's almost with the Sabres too, like the top 6. It's been the same top 6 relatively for the last few years under different coaching staffs, and it's just that same consistency level. Yes, Adams went out and made some trades in that bottom 6 and some acquisitions to really change that. That has been nice in senses, but when you're not getting that consistent top 6 play from these guys that you're paying a ton of money to, or even on the back end, which was asked to Adams in the press conference. So I guess before we get to that, like, it's almost just the same issues that were going on no matter who the coach was, and it's just, again, it starts at the top and it just, you know, goes all the way down to the organization of the players.
Yeah, and like Lindy's comments the other day, like, to me, that's a coach trying something, like saying, like, hey, like, I expect a lot from my centerman, and I've talked to Tage and Dylan, and if they can't handle it, I'll move them to the wing. Like, I don't know. Like, the coach is trying to push. The coach can only control what they're like. We talked about this with Granato. Like, this is the same stuff we talked about many times with different people. It's the coach can only control the roster that he has. Lindy is trying. He's not really doing. He could be doing a little bit more, in my opinion, in terms of trying to shake up the lineup and stuff. But he's trying. Whatever. It's at some point, it's like, this is who you are, and until the GM does something to shake things up, or until the owner steps up and shakes up his front office, I don't, like, we're here. Like, yeah, we might as well just get into Adams, because let's be honest, that's the bulk of what we're going to talk about. It's the bulk of on everyone's mind. That press conference. I'll let you start before, because I feel like you were able to listen to it. I don't know if you listened to it live, but I feel like you were definitely able to listen to it multiple times. So, like, the first time you listened to it, I'm sure you were like me. I reacted emotionally to every quote. really annoying. But you re-listened to it. I haven't re-listened to it yet. So now that you've re-listened to it, I don't know. I've seen some people try to stick up for Adams and say there has to be context added to some of his quotes and things like that. I don't know. Were fans really missing the mark in your opinion, or was it as bad as we all think?
Well, we'll start off with the Twitter poll here, and make sure to give us a follow at Sabres Semantics. Stay up to date with any polls that we release that we're going to talk about on the show to get your opinion and voices heard there. The first one is, how do you feel, Sabres fans, about what Kevyn Adams said in the press conference? The options I put was, he said some good things, said nothing of substance, some good, some same old, and expecting big changes. 78.6% said nothing of substance. I'm actually shocked it wasn't higher. 14.3% said some good, some same old, and then 3.6% for both. He said some good things and expecting big changes. So, going off of that, like, are you surprised that the fans reacted the way that they did? And even in the game against Detroit the other night, we heard like fire Adams' chants and everything. And I know he's just, the guy that is taking all the heat right now, and he's not the only guy that should take the heat. But again, going off of what he said in the press conference, I almost don't blame fans for reacting the way that they did. And even he said he understands them, but he keeps going back to this whole, there's a long-term plan in building an organization, not just for one season. But when you miss the playoffs for 14 straight years, and he's been here now for 4 or 5 of those, it's hard to give somebody multiple benefits of the doubt in that situation.
Long-term plan? What's the short-term plan?
Well, when he was asked about the $8 million in cap space that he currently has, he just said, you have to look at everything, not just this year. Well, he said that, but then he went out and got Jason Zucker in the offseason, and then they didn't go and make another move for a top 6 forward, which everybody had said that he should have done, and he doesn't want to go out and get a guy with 5 years left on his term, and I understand that, but at the same time, if there was a deal for Martin Necas, he talked about there was a player in a trade that they tried to do in the summertime, and it didn't come to fruition, and it was only going to sign possibly a 2-year extension. Like, you have to make that move. If you're serious about winning and you're serious about wanting to go forward as a playoff team this season, a 2-year deal for Martin Necas is not going to kill you. And again, whether he resigns or not, that's a whole different conversation, which got into the Buffalo is not a destination city. So there was just so much to unravel with it. And the second time around I watched it, I tried to watch it with a little bit more of, I'm trying to find the word here, fairness for Kevyn Adams, as opposed to when we all listened to it live and thought it was a complete train wreck. But the things that he talked about were the things that people have said that he needed to do in the summer, and when the season started, he said that he believes in this group and that the moves that they made, they don't have. He believes in the guys that they have in that room. Well, it's not working right now.
Yeah, so I'll start with the Necas thing, because to me that's the most interesting. So I listened to 32 Thoughts the other day. Elliot Friedman and Kyle Bukauskas. I liked some of what they said. I didn't like a lot of what they said. But it was interesting that Friedman specifically mentioned Necas. And Necas had said to Carolina, you can trade me anywhere. Because, one, he has no trade protection. He was an RFA. He had no say in where he was traded to. But he essentially, Friedman, in so many words, said, Necas said he'll go anywhere. He doesn't care. No matter where he goes, whether he stays in Carolina, gets traded to Columbus, gets traded to Buffalo, gets traded here, no matter where, he was only signing a 2-year deal, as evidenced by the fact that he signed a 2-year deal with Carolina. You said it perfectly. You still do that deal. 2 years of Martin Necas? What's the why? Why didn't you do that?
Well, then Adams came out and said that you guys would have tortured him for the return.
Who cares? That right there, then you should be fired. If you care what fans say about moves that you make, you should be fired. Like, he wouldn't be leading the league in points if he was in Buffalo. I understand that, but he would be an effective top 6 forward here that you would have for 2 years. And if you can't convince a player after having him in your building and in your organization for 2 years that he shouldn't stay here, that means you failed during those 2 years. He traded for Ryan McLeod, who was 1 year away from RFA. Do you think Ryan McLeod is signing an 8-year deal here?
No.
Like, Botterill traded for Jeff Skinner when he had 1 year left. And even though they didn't make the playoffs, Botterill was still able to convince him to sign. You don't know what a player will do once you get them in your organization. Just get them here. And I don't know, maybe he thought that people were going to be like, oh, maybe he's right. 2 years in Natchez would have been really bad. We haven't made the playoffs in 14 years. 2 years in Natchez would have been unreal.
And he doesn't have 5 or 6 years left on his deal, which is
he shouldn't
the thing
have
that
1
he's
year
scaring.
left.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the player, you mean. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. And the fact that he said he doesn't want guys with 5 years left on his deal also contradicts everything he says. I want players that want to be here. Well, players with 1 year left away from free agency probably don't want to be here. Do you think Greenway's going to re-sign? Do you think Zucker's going to re-sign?
I'd like if Zucker re-signed.
I would love it if Zucker re-signed, but what
Does
are we
he
doing
want to?
here?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the whole the palm trees and the taxes. Yeah, was that taken a smidge out of context? Yeah, there was more to it. Is he technically right that Buffalo's not a destination city right now for the NHL players? Yeah, but guess whose job it is to make it that? Kevyn Adams.
That went almost viral. I feel like every outlet was taking that and running with it.
Almost, it's gone viral. Liam McHugh from TNT is making fun of and people are getting mad at them, and it's guys, yeah, is it annoying as a Sabres fan? Sure, but come on, what are we doing? Adams, you can't say that the Bills had to build up their team and become a contender to become a destination. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to build your team up and make people want to come here. You've been here for 4+ years, Adams. You've had time to build this thing up, and you just haven't. You failed. The press conference, I understand people asked just to talk to Adams, and for some reason they decided to throw on a press conference. But the one thing I used to give Adams credit for was he was usually really good in press conferences. That press conference was not good. Even if there was some good that he said, it wasn't a positive showing for him. And then for the team to lay a clunker against Utah right after is hilarious.
Yeah, it was not a good look that the changes that they're talking about are being implemented, because they can talk all they want, but until the actual things change on the ice, I don't think people are just tired of hearing it. They're tired of hearing about the things in the building that are great, but they're not winning them hockey games. He also brought up, and I don't know if I want to bring this up to you or not on the show, but he talked about Terry Pegula and saying that he talks to him on a daily basis and that Terry is committed to doing whatever it takes to win in this organization, and he's done it down the road with the Buffalo Bills. Again, completely different business model. An NFL team is a completely different animal than running an NHL team, and clearly that's why there's been a discrepancy in the success of both franchises, with the Bills, being perennial playoff teams with a top 5 player in all the NFL and Josh Allen, and then the Buffalo Sabres down the road having missed the playoffs 14 straight years. So I know that Terry Pegula has not talked to the media since 2020, and maybe there's reason for that. Maybe he talks about Adams being the guy to be able to go there and put out the fires and be the damage control guy. It seems like, Terry has instilled a lot of trust in Kevyn Adams, maybe more than a lot of other GMs in the National Hockey League. I feel like Adams is almost like a team president in that sense, where he oversees a lot of different things, given his background and the way that he's moved around, not just the Sabres, but the business side of Pegula Sports and Entertainment. So I think he gets a little bit more leeway in that sense with the owner, but those comments he said also were something that were eye-catching.
Yeah, so I'm going to preface this. I have said multiple times on Twitter that Terry Pegula doesn't care. I'm going to walk that back. I think he cares. I think he's just completely incompetent. You're telling me that the owner has talked to the GM every day about this hockey team and hasn't tried to get something to change? It's been 14 years. And this guy who is supposedly talking to GMs every single day isn't pushing for more things to change. I know he's fired a lot of coaches, he's fired a lot of GMs, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. If you're talking to the GM every day, wouldn't your first thing that comes out of your mouth be so what are we doing here? So I've walked it back from he doesn't care to he's just completely not good at being an NHL owner. And I don't think there's many people that would disagree. It can be harsh, sure. But you haven't made the playoffs for 14 years. You fired Darcy Regier. You hired Tim Murray. Wasn't a experienced NHL GM, but Tim Murray, like him or not, and by the end we wanted him gone, but like him or not, he was aggressive and made things happen. Did it blow up in his face monumentally? Absolutely. But he made things happen. Jason Botterill, more smart, more calculated, made some good moves, had some questionable head scratchers, but at the end of the day, kind of sat on his hands a little too much.
Mm-hmm. And didn't
Kevyn
draft
Adams,
CHL players.
yeah. Kevyn Adams, promoted from the business side, never been an NHL GM before, has done it. He deserves credit. I want to stress that he deserves credit. He built up the prospect pool. He's made some good moves in the bottom six. Acquiring Greenway was good. The Byram trade was a wash, but he's a solid player. The McLeod trade looks like it's going to be good, depending on what that long-term contract looks like. But every GM they've had has had a fatal flaw. And I don't think I'm the only one who says this. I would kill to have Tim Murray as my GM right now because I guarantee you there'd be a top six forward coming in that door tomorrow. Now, again, he wasn't very good, but he made something happen. Like, we're at the point now where it's just you need to show some sign of life that you can do this because we know he can build a prospect pool. We know he can acquire bottom six talent. But the one thing, and Alex Tuck aside, that Eichel trade is an outlier to me because he had to make that trade. Eichel wanted out. Aside from the Eichel trade, there has been no significant external addition to the top six. He's drafted some guys, yes. Tage has developed. Cousins was looking like he was developing. It's not like it's just if Adams has all this trust in the world from Terry Pegula, then you should have the trust to go be aggressive and make a move. And he's just there's just mixed. Something's not adding up. Pegula is giving him every resource to win, but there's $8 million in cap space. That doesn't compute. And fans know that doesn't compute. Fans know that is a crock. So get out of here with that.
Does he want to make the playoffs this year? Because he talks about the $8 million being something that they can utilize down the road. Well, can they really, though? Because you're going to have to re-sign a few guys this next offseason. So if your goal is to make the playoffs now, it doesn't matter if you have $8 million or $16 million. You use it to your advantage. Now, when February's trade deadline comes around, do they go out and get somebody? Or do they go the other way and sell off a couple of their pending UFAs, trade away Zucker, which I would think would be a huge mistake when he's one of the better players on the team so far this year, as a guy on a one-year deal making $4 million, $5 million, a two-year deal, sorry, at $5 million per. But it's like, why was another move not made for those guys? And you talk about those guys underperforming, like Cousins, and he's a guy that Elliot Friedman, as you mentioned on 32 Thoughts, said that would they be scared to trade him, thinking another situation of a Sam Reinhart or a Ryan O'Reilly or a Brandon Montour would be in that scenario if they were to trade away Dylan Cousins. But, I think that they've been through that so many times that, you have to try something if it's not working. And you've locked up all these guys for long-term deals. You've got Owen Power making $8 million a year when he was asked by Mike Harrington why he can't play defense and why you're locking him up. And Kevyn Adams just kept saying, I know how to win a Stanley Cup. That was, another soundbite. And he also said you have to look at the whole body of work. Well, if it's the whole body of work as the player or is it as the team collective, because the team is not getting any better.
Yeah, I think Owen Power is just a popular scapegoat for people, so I'm not even going to touch base on that part. But everything else, you shouldn't be scared to trade a guy like Cousins if the right offer comes across your desk. You shouldn't be the core four. I think it's fair to say the core four of the Sabres that not are untouchable, but the core four of the Sabres I don't think are the problem here are Tage, Dahlin, Power, and Len Luukkonen because he's your goalie and he's been consistent. Those four, anyone else should be on the table. Anyone else should be being shopped to, make a significant move or whatever. But we'll talk about that in the next half because we're going to talk about what we think needs to be done. The thing that kills me is he talks about this long-term plan and all the things like that. You don't, I'm not going to deviate from that. Show me one iota of proof that your long-term plan is working and that you shouldn't deviate from it. He can't. So the press conference was a disaster on so many things. It wasn't good. It embarrassed himself. It embarrassed the team. I don't think his own players liked hearing no one wants to come here, whatever. But what it did was it galvanized a fan base and gave them a bit to use against it. Dude, people are bringing palm trees and wearing Hawaiian shirts to the game. The one thing you're not supposed to do at a press conference is give people content, and you gave them a gold mine with that palm tree quote. And you're going to have to bear that for the rest of the season until you are gone or until you fix this. And if you have any pride whatsoever, that will bother the hell out of you and you will do something.
The last thing I'll say is that he said that he believes in this group and he'll go to war with these guys. Well, he might go to war with them and he might, he might not make it out.
Yeah, he ain't going to make it out if that's his mentality. I'm going to go to war with this group. This group hasn't done crap.
Well said. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said there. I think we basically covered all of that in as much of a constructive and cordial way that we possibly could, which would have been a lot different than if we would have talked about it that day of the press conference. But again, just as you mentioned, way too much billboard material for a fan base that is just waiting to explode after 14 straight years of missing the playoffs. And yes, Adams hasn't been here for all 14 years as the general manager, but at the same time, he's been here for a long enough body of work that he could be part of that to be blamed, for him to hold some of that share of the blame. So with that said, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about what we think they should do moving forward, talk about the lineup right now, talk about the upcoming games, which, believe it or not, could get them back in a playoff spot despite losing 7 straight games, and what needs to be changed here for them to stop kind of losing and continuing to blow leads. So stay right here. We're right back on Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre. Back after this.
Are you currently looking for work in the Niagara region? If so, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road in Niagara Falls. Their many free services include a fully staffed resource area open to the public, resume and cover letter writing, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment, training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, Better Jobs Ontario information, and registration assistance. Check out their website at ehc.on.ca or call 905-358-0021 for more information. The Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work since 1983. This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario.
Celebrating a birthday, wedding, graduation, or just watching the big game, Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano is there to satisfy your pizza needs. Serving handmade Italian pizzas created with the freshest top quality ingredients, loaded subs, and their famous chicken wings. Platinum Award recipients of Community Votes Niagara for Best Pizza and Wings in all of the Niagara region 3 years running. Open 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week from their brand new location at 7156 Drummond Road in Niagara Falls. All payment options accepted to fit your convenience. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery. Place your order today at 905-374-4400 or check out their online menu for the best quality pizza and wing combos you'll find in Niagara at carmine'spizzeria.ca. You've tried the rest, why not try the best? Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, proudly serving the Niagara community since 2013.
The great guys over at Hockey Stick Man are sponsoring this video. If you play hockey but are sick of paying upwards of $400 for top-end sticks, check these guys out. There is seriously no better place to shop. The guys are fun, easy, and offer a stress-free experience from start to finish. They get pro stock sticks from major junior teams right up to the NHL teams and sell them for half the price that the same stick would sell for at a retail store. To further support their mission of saving hockey families money, they offer closeout options, which entail taking last year's retail models and blowing them out for less than wholesale prices. It's literally the best prices on the internet for their sticks. And the best sticks of all may be their Pro Blackout series, which provide a top-end stick with no graphics and literally less than half the price of a branded top-end retail model. It's always been their best-selling stick despite super cool pro stock options. It's a no-brainer to shop with these guys, and trust me, they are beauties. Head over to hockeystickman.ca/thearmchairgm and get $15 off your first order. That's hockeystickman.ca/thearmchairgm to get an additional $15 off your first order when you sign up on their website. Check out our friends at Hockey Stick Man.
Whether you just brought home a new furry member of the family or would like help finding something new for your picky eater, maybe you've done your research and want to upgrade your pet's nutrition from an entry-level food, the staff at any of the global pet food stores in the Niagara region would love to help you out. Let them show you why our lesser-known premium brands are so much better than highly advertised big corporate brands. The value from the brands we carry is not only visible in the health and vitality in your pet, but also because you won't need to feed as much as with the other brands. Better nutrition from a longer-lasting bag. We hope to see you at one of the following locations across Niagara: 3643 Portage Road in Niagara Falls, 160 Highway 20 in Font Hill, as well as 400 Scott Street and 344 Glendale Avenue in St. Catharines. Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Hey, hey, here we go, it's hockey night in Buffalo. Hey, hey, here we go, the boys in blue, white, and gold. Hey, hey, here we go, make some noise, get in the zone. All for one and one for all, let's hear you from your heart and soul. And we will stand, raising our hands, saying, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo. We will be here till the end, saying, let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo.
Welcome back to part 2 of today's Sabres Semantics episode. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad are back with you, continuing to discuss the Sabres' recent stretch of games and kind of the state of the team that's gone through quite the roadblock here. 7 straight losses and a press conference from their general manager that was highly criticized and gave a lot of sound bites for fans and media to be able to use. Make sure to give us a follow on X at Sabres Semantics. Stay up to date with all of our Sabres coverage, and you can give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, as well. Give us some love on our YouTube channel if you're watching on the video version. Make sure to hit subscribe, and smash that bell, and thank you to those listening today on your favorite on-demand audio platform. So, Austin, we'll kind of tie this into the second poll on today's show. We'll start off with how concerned are you with the recent blown leads for the Sabres? Very concerned, changes need to be made. Somewhat concerned, indifferent, some bad breaks, and not concerned at all. Very concerned was the winner, to no surprise, at 86.4%, and then it was all the way down to 9.1% for somewhat concerned. So with the games against Colorado, which was a monumental one, and I promise I will never send you a text again saying the team is good until the final buzzer hits. As the eternal optimist on this show, I got egg on my face after that one. And then the Detroit game, which was just completely unacceptable against the Detroit team that has mightily struggled as well for them to be able to come back from 2 goals in the third. So what can you say about what's happened lately? Like, we talked about it a lot in the what's happened. So what needs to change for them to stop having these types of habits continue to rear their ugly heads?
I mean, basically execute what you're supposed to do. Like, whenever they have a lead, it feels like the Colorado game was the perfect encapsulation of it, right? You're up 4-1, but you're consistently, every time you're in your own zone, you can't break out properly. And if you can't break out properly, you're screwed. So execute your breakouts properly. But to me, and this kind of doesn't really necessarily tie into holding leads, but it ties into something tangible that they could change that probably could impact their game positively, is, for the love of God, please change the power play. Please change your system on the power play, because that Detroit game, you had a power play with 2 minutes and 19 seconds left. Detroit's penalty kill is awful. One of the worst in the league. You couldn't execute a zone entry to set up your power play. And then the game goes to overtime, shootout, you lose. But, like, it's just...
Is Dahlin that big of a difference on the power play?
But it's not good when he's here too, which is an overarching issue to me, which is the system for the power play clearly doesn't work. They promoted Seth Appert to run the power play. I liked some of what he did, and I thought maybe with NHL talent he could execute a power play. He can't execute anything on the power play. Like, say what you want about how good you think these guys are in terms of being superstars in the league. Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, Alex Tuch, JJ Peterka, Bowen Byram, these guys are capable of entering the zone with control of the puck. But for some reason on the power play, like, they can't. One of the easiest things to point to is they do that stupid drop pass where all the penalty killers have to do is just line up on their own blue line, because the second you drop that puck off, all the power play attackers are just, they can't go enter the zone, so they have to wait. So they have to be stationary. That means the penalty killers can be stationary and just suffocate the entrance lane. Like, it's just basic things like that. That is like, hey, if your power play, we said this a couple years last year, your power play was average, you're probably a playoff team. Their power play isn't even below average right now. I would take below average at this point, and it might make a difference. In terms of other things, like I said, to me, this team is just, they're mentally fragile. They've been mentally fragile for a while. They're kind of like the Ice Dogs. We could, when one thing goes wrong, it just snowballs out of control. And that is what happens with the Sabres. And that's how you just know, like, no team, I know Colorado has a good roster, but no team should give up a 3-goal lead in the third period. Detroit doesn't even have that good of a roster, and you gave up a 2-goal lead in the third period. It's just things like that where it's like, I said 2 points, like, don't be mentally fragile and change the power play. To me, those are two of the biggest things. I don't know how you necessarily fix not being mentally fragile, but like something. I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's, I can't put it necessarily on the coaching, but maybe if you're Lindy Ruff, just coach aggressive to score goals all game long. Maybe that's how you need to do it. Because this team, relatively, for the most part, they start games well. They don't finish. So maybe it's just, hey, let's play the game like it's the first period all game long.
Well, the way I'm looking at it is, I know the trade freeze is coming for the December break, but like, what teams
I think the trade freeze is on right now for Adams, but
yeah,
whatever.
but like, it's, even if it wasn't, I don't think he's making a trade tomorrow to bring in a top 6 forward, because he's had 2.5, 3 months to do that already. And again, I know teams might be hesitant to make moves, but they can still make moves if the price is there. So if Adams had that desperation and that urgency to make moves to bring in somebody in the top 6, when Jason Zucker has been one of your better power play guys, as a guy you brought in as an unrestricted free agent, it's good, but it's also bad at the same time, because just things are not going on the power play. So I think for me, it's just spending the money. Like, at least showing that you're trying to make a move. You're trying to show in the second half that you can be a competitive playoff team. And I know Adams has said that, they're still in it. Well, and that was the other thing. Sorry to bring up the press conference again, but he said you don't make the playoffs on December 6th.
Yeah, but you missed the playoffs in December, and the Sabres have done that multiple times. Mm-hmm. Not on the verge of doing it again, because this year the league just seems so bad. But like, yeah, like I said, like, I get what he was trying to do at that press conference, but it blew up in his face at every turn. Like, yeah, like you just said, the trade freeze is coming. That would it would sure as heck be nice to have a move, right? Like, and I know the proper theme is, like, people, like Mike Harrington was a big champion of this. Well, it's hard when players have trade protection. You don't build a team through trades. I don't disagree necessarily. You don't become a Stanley Cup winner and build a team through trades and spending a lot of money on free agency, but you know what you do? You can sure as hell add to your roster. And, the whole excuse of these players have trade protection. There are so many players in this league that don't have trade protection. So spare me that. Yeah, sure. Do the elite of the elite have trade protection and they're probably not going to waive to come to Buffalo? Yes, totally fine. But back to the offseason, because it's not going to happen now. You know who didn't have trade protection? A guy like Joel Farabee. You know who doesn't have trade protection? A guy like Connor Garland.
Or Martin Necas.
Yeah, Martin Necas. But that's bringing up old wounds. But like, there's guys who can make an impact in the offseason that were probably available to be had, or make them available by offering something significant. I don't buy that excuse. Is he going to make a trade? Probably not. Like, let's be honest. I mean, well, that's not true. Are we approaching our Eric Robinson trade that we got a couple years ago?
That was earth-shattering.
Right?
But that's the thing. It's not like Adams doesn't have the assets. It's not like you're the Tampa Bay Lightning and you've traded away every single prospect and draft pick that you have in your cupboard for the next 5 years. The Sabres have so many picks. They have so many prospects, and they've shown that they've traded Matt Savoy to go get Ryan McLeod. They've made those moves, and they still have so many more that they could do. Again, you'd hate to see top-end prospects go out the door, but I think people are, after 14 years, sick of hearing about the great prospects, because every time they come up, it never translates into the team success, and those players end up moving on and doing well or what have you, or they don't end up panning out. So I think if the urgency was there to make a move, he could make it tomorrow. Well, he can't because of the trade freeze, but you know what I mean.
He could easily. I don't think the trade freeze is until, like, closer to Christmas, so I think he can make a trade tomorrow if he wanted to. But, like, yeah, I understand some people, like, maybe a year or two ago, we didn't necessarily want to see top prospects leaving But now I think you could poll any Sabres fan and they're like, literally trade any prospect. I do not care. Call up a team like Nashville, who is struggling and will clearly trade off some guys. Offer them one of your top prospects and go get somebody. Call up the Philadelphia Flyers. Call up the
New York Rangers.
He's not a top six at all, this name I'm going to mention, but like Vancouver has been dangling Nils Hoglander out there. He hasn't played very well, but you know what? It's a guy. Like that's where we've gotten to at this point now, where it's just, hey, make a move. Show that this is not acceptable.
They don't have to do cap gymnastics either. It's not like they have $400,000 in cap space.
No. But depending on your opinion on Terry Pegula, you might think that there's an internal cap, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but I also understand why everyone thinks that, because every move Kevyn Adams has made implies that there's an internal cap, because why else do we have $8 million in cap space right now?
For a team, it's not like they're a team that's in a clear rebuild, like a team like San Jose. Even they're spending money. You know what I mean? Like, even they're using the cap to their advantage to bring in guys and to get prospects and picks. Like, I know the Sabres aren't going to go that route, but even if you're a rebuilding team, you could still use your cap. And the Sabres are finally a team that should be buying and using the cap to make a team that is going to go for a playoff run, so you can add a guy or two to get to that cap. And they're just not. I feel like they're not utilizing that. People have talked about what their front office department is, if it's too small, if it's not doing the right things. And again, I don't want to get into all that part of it, but you have to almost evaluate every layer of this organization to understand why are things not working, because they've changed coaches so many times. They've changed general managers so many times. Players have come, players have gone. What is different here?
What's not different is the question you need to ask, and what's not different is the guy at the top.
But
14 years is long enough to see and draw a conclusion that, hey, maybe this guy is the problem.
Now, I'm not trying to be a Terry Pegula apologist here, but if the Bills were still going through as long of a rebuild as the Sabres were, now that the Bills are winning and it's a completely different model, people don't seem to be getting on Terry Pegula as much on the Bills side of things because the team's doing well. So, like, where do you balance that? I know you follow both teams, so it's like, how do you balance the fact that one team that he owns is doing well, while another team that he owns is continuously not making the playoffs? Like, how are they so different, despite being different sports, that he gets the benefit of the doubt for one and not the other?
I look at it in the simplest way I can put this as three things. One, he got really lucky when he hired Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, because he hasn't really shown the ability to hire coaches on the NHL side. He hasn't really had to hire anyone else on the NFL side. He hired Rex Ryan and then got McDermott. So can't rule out the possibility that he got extremely lucky there. Two, he does not claim to be a football fan or a football guy the way he does a hockey guy. So I think he is more inclined to just leave Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott alone. I also think Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have the guts to stick up to him and say, you're not messing with this. We will take care of this. The NFL is such a not a weird league, but if you get a franchise caliber quarterback, that can sustain success for a while. Whereas in the NHL, if you get one franchise caliber player, it doesn't necessarily automatically equate to having a championship window. So I'm not saying it's easier in the NFL, because it's not. You have way more things you need to be dealing with. But what do we always talk about as NFL fans? If you got a quarterback, you got a shot. So I think like it kind of encapsulates those three things. Like, he got lucky early on and found Sean McDermott, a guy who could change the culture. He has not found a culture changer on the NHL side. I don't even necessarily know if he could, if he was tasked with doing that. Two, he thinks he knows hockey, so he's more involved with the hockey team. The NFL is a completely different beast, and that's all I got, because I like he's the only constant with this Sabres team over 14 years is the ownership. And like, people can say what they want. Like, yeah, he invested a lot of money early on with this team. He spent a lot of money early on, but the second Ville Lando and Christian Ehrhoff didn't really work out. I know he gave Kyle Oposo 6x6, but he's gotten less and less aggressive in trying to improve this this team at the top. Like, they drafted Eichel, right? They drafted Reinhart. Both guys left and became successes. They were already successes here, but obviously it was highlighted somewhere else. And like, I know Friedman said they might be worried to trade Cousins and have him be successful somewhere else. Well, there's a reason they're successful elsewhere. That's because they get to competently run organizations. Individuals can be good at hockey on bad teams, but if they go to a competent team that's well run and built the right way, their success is going to be tenfold, and that's what you've seen with O'Reilly, Reinhart, and Eichel. Montour and Ed Rodriguez to a lesser extent, but those guys were good here for the most part. It just, we didn't realize what we had because we weren't making the playoffs because they're not competently run. And to me, that's Pegula.
So if that happens with Dylan Cousins, how do you feel about that?
Would it be annoying? Yeah. But like, I think it's less likely with Cousins because Cousins' success here is 1 year? He scored 31 goals. And I'm not out on Cousins yet. He's annoying the hell out of me right now because he sucks this year. And a big reason why the Sabres are struggling is because he sucks this year. But he could still put it together. But like, if someone comes over to you and offers you like a true number 2 center in exchange for Dylan Cousins, not that they would because he's not very good right now. But you can't just be like, well, I don't want to trade Cousins because I don't want him to go win somewhere else. Then you're just limiting the moves that you can make, and you're already making your job, which is already rather difficult, even more difficult than you need to make it.
The Middlestat move. I mean, again, Byram has been good here, but people are going to look at Middlestat and say that he's been a success since being traded. So does Kevyn Adams look at that trade and say, do I want to move another younger-ish center and have him be successful like Casey Middlestat?
Yeah, but Middlestat hasn't been that successful this year.
Yeah. I know, but I'm trying to think of from Adams' perspective of why he wouldn't want to make that move. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, then you're not cut out for this job, my guy. Like, I don't know how else to say it nicely. Like, we talk about what needs to change. If the owner gave any damn, he would have went to Kevyn Adams and said, you have a week to make something change here or you're gone. That clearly hasn't happened yet, so I don't think we can sit here with bated breath, but I don't think we can expect Adams to be fired. The only thing we can hope for is that a trade happens, and you and I already have talked about it. I don't see it happening because he just hasn't done it.
Yeah, like, is he going to be given an ultimatum at some point, like either you make the playoffs this year or it's over?
I would say yeah, but all the moves that he made, like the fact that he didn't acquire a top 6 forward and just banked on the top 6 being able to get him over the hump again, doesn't lead me to believe that he's worried about his job. Maybe somehow this vitriol with the fan base right now is enough to get through to Pegula to change things. But I don't know. It's been 14 years and nothing's changed yet.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it ad nauseum in the past, and today it's just, where's the breaking point? Where's okay, the light's going to flip the other way and they're going to make changes, or the team just going to start playing better? I mean, I don't think we expect some miracle to just happen tomorrow and all of a sudden they start playing great. Although as we kind of move on here before we wrap up, Austin, we talk about the upcoming games. They got the Rangers tonight. They've got Washington, Toronto, Montreal, Toronto again, Boston, New York. So they've got a lot of Atlantic divisional games coming up. So believe it or not, they could end up being in a playoff spot by the end of before they hit the Christmas break, which is incredible with how bad that they've played and how things have just unraveled. But what do you need to see here tonight against the Rangers and moving forward against these 4 divisional games they've got in the Atlantic? We could be coming back in January and saying this team's in a wild card spot right now and maybe think of it differently. But would we think of it differently? I don't know, because would the same problem still happen January, February, going a long losing streak again after springing together a few wins? Like, the consistency level is just not there, and there's too many peaks and valleys for this team for you to believe that they're going to sustain some sort of winning success for the second half of the year.
Yeah, I'll start by basically saying, like, I think that ultimately, like, when the drought gets broken, it's not going to be pretty. Like, they're not going to win the Atlantic Division the first year they make the playoffs.
Not going to win the President's Trophy.
Yeah, so, like, these games are still important. As annoyed and apathetic as fans are starting to feel, like, yeah, you win 2 out of your next 3, things look a lot different. I guess the problem is, do you expect them to? I don't know. They did sweep the California trip. Like, they are capable of playing well. So it's annoying. That's the conundrum here. Is this team is capable of playing well? They just need a push to get him over the hump, and like the GM just is not doing it. Going forward, yeah, you beat New York tonight, which you should be able to beat New York tonight. They're reeling worse than you are. They just traded their captain in a really ugly situation. They just gave their goalie a huge extension. They're on the, I don't know if they're on the verge, but like Kreider's name has been thrown out there. People want Mika Zibanejad's off the roster. Like things aren't pretty in the Rangers land either. And if you can't capitalize on that, don't get me wrong, I know they have Shesterkin, but like the Blackhawks just beat them. Like if you can't capitalize on this team, I don't know if you're ever going to capitalize on something. So yeah, come out with some fire under your feet, like win the game, and things might start to look a little bit different. It's going to take a lot more to get fans back on board here. And I think rightfully so, most of the fans' anger is towards the front office and less towards the coaching staff and the players. At some point, the players do got to perform. Tonight against the Rangers, it's up to players to perform because no help's coming tonight. So it's up to them to go get the win.
Do you almost think it's good where they're at right now that they're going to have some games that should just automatically light a fire when you're playing against division or rivals teams like Boston, Montreal, Toronto? Like all these teams are up on the schedule here, so you shouldn't need any extra motivation, that you want to come away with strong performances in those games and try to show your best against teams that, one, have taken advantage of you for so long, and two, in your own building as well, not having those teams come in with, basically being a 50-50 or even a road game at times. Like to me, that should be the motivator enough for them to be able to come out with strong efforts here the next, 6 or so games for the break.
Yeah, and like in a year, we kind of said it last year that the East was really weak. It feels like it's that again this year. Like you're 1 point out of last in the conference
with Montreal,
but you're a win tonight away from being a point, 2 points out of a playoff spot. Like I don't know. Like, change our minds, please, because we said it last year when the wild card was really low. It feels like this year is gettable. Like it feels like who aside from maybe Florida and I guess Toronto in the Atlantic, like Boston feels like they're on a downslope. Tampa Bay is still good, but they're definitely not like the elite Tampa dynasty that they were. You, Detroit, and Ottawa and Montreal just can't seem. You're just twiddling your thumbs, and you just can't seem to break out of it. So I don't know if you're ever needed a win streak now. It's now, and Kevyn Adams has to be hoping for this because I don't know if they don't beat New York tonight. It's not crazy to think that they lose to Washington and Toronto, and then we're looking at 10 in a row. And if he survives 10 in a row, he's not going anywhere, and we're stuck.
Yeah, they almost need the advance on that Christmas present underneath the tree, or Adams is going to get some coal in his stock, and I don't know. I'm trying to make some Christmas references here.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Like in the micro, it's on the players. You have to perform and win these games. But in the macro, man, it's been on Kevyn Adams for so long, and I've tried to stay positive with him, but we're done with that.
After that press conference, I don't know how that changed anybody's perspective into the positive.
Yeah, the press conference was the nail in the coffin, but I think, I don't know. Like I said, to me, it starts with Terry Pagula, but he's not going anywhere, so I guess it's just praying and hoping he gets lucky on the next guy. If there even is a next guy, because I'm just assuming Kevyn Adams is fired if they miss the playoffs, but he might not be.
Well, we'll see what happens. We'll come back in January and talk about it all. Maybe the Sabres are able to get things turned around. Maybe they make a trade. Maybe some moves or some changes happen within the organization. Maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised or not. But we will come back if there is any breaking news that the Sabres do. And if not, we'll be back for our regular scheduled programming sometime in the new year. Thank you to everybody that's tuned in today to listen to Austin and I vent our frustrations with everything that's kind of gone on with the Sabres as of late. And to you fans out there, we know you're just as frustrated as we are coming on and talking about the show. And hopefully things can can be changed around in the positive. Me as the eternal optimist here that Austin loves so much. But regardless of that, that's been another episode of Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work in Niagara since 1983. Thank you to everybody that watched us on the video version on YouTube and everybody that listened to us on your favorite on-demand audio platform. For Austin Broad, my name is Brandon Caputo. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, enjoy your holidays, and we'll talk to you again in January.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.